Hi, Kevin here, and today I'm going to show you how I made a poster and title treatment for Henry V for the Tennessee Shakespeare Company. So here we are in Photoshop, and I've created the word Henry in a text element, and we're going to set a simple emboss on this to give it a little bit of dimension. It's helpful when you're embossing to fill the image that you're going to emboss with a gradient that gives it something to work with. You can see I'm adjusting the curves on this a little bit to get a little more contrast in there. And here we're going to introduce the 5 part. We're going to rasterize the text, which basically means we take it from being a font to being a bitmap graphic. I'm going to enlarge it significantly, position it behind the other components, and we're also going to apply a gradient to that. We selected preserve transparency on this, so that way the gradient will only be affecting that particular layer and the pixels in it. So we've adjusted the curves, positioned it where we want it. It's always good to save your files. Save often is a great way to avoid a problem. You'll see a little bit of my file management structure here with clients, years, and titles. So now we're going to add some decorative components. I have a folder full of images of fire and smoke and other things that I've photographed over the years. I use Photo Mechanic to manage this. I find it's a very rapid, easy system to manage a lot of images. So this folder is just full of images and effects that I go back to frequently. So fire, made a bonfire in the backyard once, and this is all my library of that shoot. What I'm looking for here is an image that has a nice shape to it and some contrast. We're going to open up those images. Typically, I use Photoshop as a creative process, so I'm not entirely sure exactly where I'm going with this. I'm going to pull in a bunch of different images as layers into the file and sort of see what fits. So I'm dragging and dropping the layers into the file. I don't need those once I've pulled them in, so I'm just closing those files. And as soon as we're done with that, I'll set the layers to lighten, which basically means that anything that's lighter than the background will show through in the otherwise it'll drop out. In this case, fire is wonderfully contrasty. What's not bright is typically dark. So when you set it to lighten, the fire pops up and everything else pretty much drops back. And with a little tweaking of the curve, you can really get it to be a great effect. So we're making the canvas a little bigger. I like this shape of this fire element. And I'm going to play around a little bit with where it's positioned. And here I'm going to just tweak the curve a little bit to get that background to drop out a little bit more so we don't see so much of the charcoal bit in the background. Now comes the creative part. It's just where should it go? In this case, fire is appropriate for this topic. Henry V is full of war and violence and anger and love and passion and all those kinds of things. Fire is a great component to that. Just putting a little drop shadow in behind the Henry here. I've duplicated the layer, filled it with black, and now I'm just blurring it slightly. And now we're going to go find a sword component. I've gone on to Google. I've Googled for broadsword. I've told it to look for a Creative Commons license and a large file. Found something here on Wikipedia that's really pretty much the right thing. It's a high resolution file which we can legally use. So I'm going to copy and paste that right into my document. Be careful about where you source your images and don't violate people's copyright. That's an important thing. All right, so I'm going to position this on this document, and we're going to isolate it from its background. First thing I'm going to do is sharpen it significantly. This will help pull up the contrast of the sword itself and also make it easier to drop out the background and make the whole component quite a bit more dramatic. So I'll play around with those unsharp settings to figure out what's exactly the right fit between contrasty but also not crushing all the detail. Just take the magic wand tool and click around the edges till you get a nice clean marching ants thing there. Got to clean it up a little bit more by hand using different tools. And then got all these little components on the corners. Sped this up a little bit so it's not so slow to watch. This takes a little while. And once we're done with that, we're going to click on the Add Layer Mask tool in the layers, which will basically drop out everything that's selected and leave us just with the sword. All right, here we're going to add, we're going to smooth out that selection a little bit, just makes it a little less jaggy. Drop it out, and there's our sword. Oh, a little section that needs cleaning up. Go in and you can paint in the layer mask with black or white, and whatever you paint in white comes back, whatever you paint in black goes away. It's pretty sweet. I'm a big fan of layer masks, use them constantly. A little more cleanup. You don't have to be too crazy about this stuff, because by the time this image gets done, who knows where all those little details will show or not show. You can always kind of wait till you're done and see how much cleaning up needs to happen. All right, so here we have the components, the sword, the type, the fire, playing around a little bit with the layering and which things go where. You'll see how the fire just sort of takes care of itself. It looks like it's wrapping around the sword. There's very little Photoshop going on here in the sense of me manipulating that. It's just a coincidence of the relative luminosity of the different layers that it appears to be doing that, which is one of the great tricks. All right, so we're just going to play around a little bit with the type and the contrast here. I want to make sure things are really have a lot of impact and make sense visually. Like I said, it's a creative process. Here I'm just going to add a little bit of light and dark to the type components to give them a little shadow, little highlights where I want it to be. It makes it more dramatic, more dimensional, and really more cinematic in a lot of ways. So all I'm doing is actually painting either with black or white right on the letter. I've preserved the transparency. So jumping ahead, we decided to turn the sword sideways, and the treatment that we needed for the poster needed to be more horizontal. So we turned the sword sideways, positioned the letters as you see, and then I took the flyer element, and this was a happy coincidence, and duplicated it, flipped it horizontally, and aligned it on this side, and now we have this wonderful bracketing effect where the fire not only brackets the final artwork, but also almost looks like shoulders and arms of a man behind. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it.